Hi guys, it's just Fazz here with a quick note before me and Rich screw up another starting intro to our podcast. I'm currently here in a holiday home on the east coast of England in the driving rain about 10 metres from the sea and loving life. But I just wanted to say that this Friday we will be doing a bit of a special live sort of stream sesh on our Instagram page, Living La Vita Loca Pod, and it won't be Rich, unfortunately, he's not available, but me and Liam, who's been on the pod before, and our friend Kyle, who's coming up on the pod soon, hopefully. We're going to be doing a little bit of a session, just playing some Switch, just all in aid of gaming, hashtag gaming for AS. AS is axial spondylitis, and it's something that I personally suffer with as well. So it's an autoimmune disease. It's not wonderful, but it's a type of arthritis but it's not brought on with old age, even though I'm getting there. But yeah, so if you fancy watching us just have a bit of a mess around, playing some games, I think we're going to play some Smash Brothers, some Marvel Alliance, and yeah, just to raise awareness around axial spondylitis. So please give us a look, and hope you enjoy this week's pod. Cheers. Welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast. My name is Fazz.
I'm Rich. Why did I say it like that?
Stop ruining the start of these shows.
Sorry.
With your choking and your weird vibes. This is a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs, mostly around PSP and PS Vita.
Apart from today.
It's not jazzy, but it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Well, we'll jazz that up.
Yeah.
And not today, you're right, yeah.
No.
Well, maybe not. Maybe. Ooh.
Not from me.
No, me either.
No. Well, there you go then. So we've already fucked it.
Ta-da. So, this week is our free play week, for our monthly free play week, where we keep secrets and lies from each other. And we don't tell each other what we're going to play, and then we're going to talk about it, and we're going to review it, and then we leave it up to the other person to give us a score for that. And that score will live in infamy forever and ever. So your review better be worth its salt. Otherwise, you might end up with a shit score or a really good score. Maybe it'll be the inverse. Maybe your review will be too good for what you've got in your head.
I mean, that's what happened with The Lion King, wasn't it? When we got the cat to score it.
Yeah.
So,
that does happen when you get cattails scores,
yeah.
I think, in most walks of life. Like, if you send like a cat to see an Andrew Lloyd Webber play, I reckon they would overscore.
You reckon generous markers?
Yeah, I think
notoriously so.
Yeah, very much so. That's why Joseph in Technical Dreamcoat rang for so long. I think we've missed a pun about cats.
Yeah, it's dangling out there somewhere, isn't it? I just can't quite put my finger on it.
How long did it take you to get there? Because it took me...
Really? I thought you were deliberately avoiding it.
It took me that long. I was like, wait a minute. Oh, there's a thing, isn't there?
I wondered why you went with Joseph. But yeah, no, that's fine. Well, we were only 2 minutes in, so it couldn't have been that long, could it?
It was long enough. I apologise to everybody associated with Cats, the theatre production, and everybody associated with Cats, the animal. Yeah.
Oh dear.
So, what are you drinking this week, Rich?
The
nectar.
This one's from North Brewing Co. Open Space. Apparently, it's quite grapefruity and tropically, which it's perfectly quaffable. It's quite nice.
Yeah. I feel like you review most of the beers as perfectly quaffable.
That is because I have one setting when it comes to beer, and that is quaff.
Set your beer to quaff. It is quaffable, yeah.
It's nice.
I felt like it was nondescript.
It is missing a certain something to make it awesome, but it is nice.
I feel like North Brewing are quite like that in a way that I think I like all of their beers, but I feel like they're all nondescript in their own category.
They're solid.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I can go to North Brewing and drink all their beers and go, I'm enjoying this beer, but I don't go, oh, that makes this beer stand out from this one or another brewery. So that's the interesting sort of thing. I feel like they are the session ale of IPA breweries.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever... I've never been disappointed.
Exactly, which is great, isn't it?
But at the same time, I've never been, like, elated to see it anywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They are the 7 out of 10 batters, aren't they? That isn't
Yeah, solid and reliable.
Yeah, but in our podcast, they'd be the 5 out of 10. Weren't they? We decided that we were going to be a bit more like, which doesn't sound bad. I feel bad for North Brewing now.
Yeah.
Don't kick us out of there. I think I'm going there in like September for like a beer festival, so I'll get there and get harassed and...
Well, if that happens, then at least they've heard this. So, win?
Somebody from North Brewing's like, really getting stirred up about it. So, yeah, we talked about the beers. We're going to talk about the games. Who went first in the first free play? I went first.
Did you?
Yeah, I went first because Lion King popped up second. No, that's a lie. You went first.
Yeah.
Because we got excited about it, didn't we? So,
I got all sweary.
Yeah, but rightly so.
Well, yeah, it was frustrating. Do you want to go first this time then?
Yeah, cool. I mean, and I can get sweary. I will. I will be swearing.
Swearing will happen.
Yeah. So, I brought 2 games along this week. I brought 2 short games. We haven't really set any rules for this, have we? But
no.
I immediately feel like I'm cheating. So, but
not as much as I am.
Oh no! Why did we have to screw each other over so early?
I'm not cheating.
All right. So the reason I brought 2 games is because of the length of both games. I kind of crammed them both in within the space of a week, really.
Good work.
I probably could have crammed them both in the space of a day if I'd really pushed it, I think, to be honest.
What were you playing?
Yeah, not to completion per se. Certainly one of them I've played to completion, but the other one I didn't, and that's because of the type of game it is. But certainly, I guess the idea of that game and how much I played that game, I could get the concept of it within an hour. Mm-hmm. So... let's start with the first one.
Right.
Turnip Boy commits tax evasion.
Nice.
Have you played Turnip Boy?
I haven't, but I have heard of it.
Okay. So
because it's a great title.
Yeah, and that's what drew me to it. So,
nice.
2021 game. The sequel, I believe, is coming out this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's got a ridiculous title, just like this one. I can't remember what it is, though. But yeah, this game... is as crazy as its title, in so much that it's just a bit of fun. Like, in terms of like the way that it comes across, it has a very specific tone, and that specific tone is just like Rick and Morty kind of mental, but probably dumbed down a bit more than that in terms of like probably not as sweary or as high concept, really. So you are Turnip Boy.
Right.
And you commit tax evasion, you shithouse. And the local onion mayor is not happy about that. Mm. You owe him £123,000. It's no small change.
Wow.
For a Turnip Boy. I mean, like,
Jesus, what does he do for a living?
I know. It's like, I think it's all on council tax, if I'm going to be honest, which... I don't know how much council tax you charge within a vegetable patch.
Yeah.
It seems sizable.
What sort of band that would be in.
Yeah. Yeah, so for those listeners not in the UK, we live in bands because we have to be put into sections in the world. So I don't know what your tax is like on your house around the world, but yeah, I don't know what band I am, but I know I pay enough. Probably not as much as Turnip Boy by the sound of things. But yeah, so the local mayor, not happy about that, and he turns you into his errand boy to then pay him back.
Right.
So this game is a more recent game for us, so I'll try not to spoil or anything, because I would recommend to go away and play this game. I don't want that to tarnish or colour what grade you're going to give this game based on my review, but I would certainly say that I'd recommend to go away and play it. So yeah, it's an action adventure game. It's 16-bit ish, maybe I'd say probably even maybe 8-bit, and it's almost like a top-down adventure game in the veins of Pokemon.
Right.
I'd say almost even feels like you're in Pallet Town, and the way that you go around the different areas on the map, you leave a screen, you turn up on another screen, and you almost end up in little dungeons in a way. So there's about 4 or 5 little dungeons, like a graveyard, like an old farmhouse that's dilapidated, a nuclear bunker, like those kind of areas that you go into, and you're sent there to go and retrieve an item, basically, and a MacGuffin by the Onion Mare, and there'll be a boss fight in there as well. So maybe some mini boss fights and then a boss fight as well. So Turnip Boy, he goes to get himself a soil sword. Really important if you are a turnip going on an adventure to go, get soil sword. Get bits. You've got to get a soil sword, haven't you? Of course, it's sword, but sword. Why wouldn't you? So you the way it feels like a bit like a Pokemon game is almost that you remember like in Silphco. I think it is Silphco in Vermilion City, one of the biggest cities in the middle of the initial Pokemon map, and you go in and it's Team Rocket's lair, and it's a big department store, and you get transported around on little portal things. That actually happens in this game at one point.
Okay. Right.
And another point where you're breaking rocks like you do with Pokemon, and it feels basically just like you're kind of playing Pokemon without the Pokemon collection, effectively. Like you're kind of just roaming around that sort of adventure world.
Almost sounds like you kind of SNES era, like Legend of Zelda, or like Mother games or something like that, or like Earthbound.
I mean, you couldn't be more right. It literally is just those games, effectively. It just looks prettier, and you can tell, obviously, that it is of this era, rather than being an initial SNES game. It looks beautiful, but in that same 8-bit, 16-bit pixel mode. So the quests, I would say, are quite straightforward. It's the world that you live in that probably makes it a bit quirky. The characters that you run into tend to be other little bits of vegetables, fruits, foods. One memorable character is, it's a carrot I think you run into, and actually he's on a construction site, and basically this construction worker kind of tells you not to play there, and he shows you, he goes, I've got a permit showing you I'm a construction worker. Turnip Boy has a pennant for ripping up items he finds. In fact, the only option it gives you is to rip up the piece of paper that you find. So you rip up his permit, and then he says, well, you showed me. And it's kind of like that kind of game, really, where it's just like, Turnip Boy is just couldn't give a shit, really. He's just like, basically, he doesn't speak as a character either, so he just basically, like, the other characters monologue at you, and you just reply in exclamation marks. So it's really good how they kind of fill that world out. And another character I couldn't not tell you about is a piece of macaroni cheese.
Cool.
And have you heard the Navy SEALs copy pasta before? It's like from 2012. It was a meme.
Not off the top of my head.
No. So basically, I hadn't heard about it until this game, because I had to find out where Mac's monologue had come from, because it was so specific, in so much that it was very much like a hard man, crazy guy, basically sort of saying that he's got like 700 different ways that he would kill you, and like he's got over 300 confirmed kills, and like there is this monologue. I definitely recommend you go away and look up Navy SEALs copy pasta, and you'll get the idea of this character Mac, and it pretty much like does a copy pasta of copy pasta, and it's I guess, is it meant to be a copy paster? I don't know. Anyway, it's a very strange character that you just run into, and he just comes at you for no reason, and you're like, oh, I'm just Turnip Boy, I'm just going about my business. So yeah, the quests are quite straightforward, and the enemies, I would say, are also quite straightforward for the most part. Some of the bosses get a little bit more difficult, and you do have to think about. It's almost a bit more of a puzzle of how you beat them. Like, again, not trying to spoil or anything, but you know, most of the time it tends to be a kind of giant radioactive animal, like maybe a cat or a pig or something, and they will have, as with any bosses, have 2 or 3 concepts that you have to then work out what they're doing, survive, and then go, right, this is how I'm now going to combat that.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're basic, but it just does it really well. Like it just, you know, you just know that you can sort of, I guess, beat this game quite easily, but there are challenges there. But you're just enjoying yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's not you're not worrying about how you're going to beat this game, which is, you're worrying enough to think, oh, actually, there is 1 or 2 bosses you kind of go, there's a tiny difficulty spike. But certainly it's the first game I've played in a long time where I've been like, the difficulty actually feels like quite flat in this. There's also a God mode that can make it even easier. And I was like, I would be shocked if there was anybody that was over the age of 10 would need that mode to beat this game. But there might be, you know, you never know. But I just don't see it as a necessity, really, that you'd possibly need. But the story gets a bit dystopian towards the end. It's a bit weird, really. Kind of like there's a couple of heavy moments where you're like, oh, actually, this feels like bad things happened here. And I'm a turnip boy wandering around in this dystopian, scary nuclear bunker situation. And it's like, yeah, it's a bit weird. Like, that feels like a bit of a misstep almost, in a way, in terms of the fun of the story. You know, and the ending does there is a twist, and you're like, oh wow, this is like, you know, this isn't who I thought Onion Boy, Turnip Boy is. You know, I didn't know this is who I thought it was. Do you know what I mean? Like, so right. Yeah, they do keep it fresh all the way through, all the way through the 2.5 hour playtime.
So a film, basically.
Yeah, basically. And it's appreciated that it just sticks around that long. It doesn't need to be any longer. You get loads of achievements for it as well. Like, as in, just by if you speak to every character in this world, and it is one of these ones where you can speak to every single character in this world, and you know you've spoken to them because they say the same thing again, and it's almost like you just know that you've accessed everything you need to. Yeah. There are side quests. You collect hats for no reason. You just can wear different hats, different turnip hats. You know, I've probably described everything in this game within this review. That's the kind of like amount of things that are in this game. There is an infinite boss battle at the end that you can get into, where you get on this train and go between train carriages, and in those train carriages, the bosses of the whole world are in there, and you go through it, you know, like a bit of a Streets of Rage sort of mode,
boss rush type thing.
Yeah. So that's there if you want to kind of have a little bit more difficulty in things. But yeah, that's kind of all there is really to it. And I probably haven't sold it very well because it sounds like there's not a lot there. But what there is there is brilliant. And this, as I spoke about last week, this is the game that I played on the Razer Kishi. Oh, yeah. So to have that handheld in my hands, it felt like the perfect sort of game to be sat down on the go, and you know, sort of sat down on the go. That makes no sense. You know, it's like, you know, like you could move around the room if you wanted to, but it felt like actually it was almost a game that you could probably get done in a whole journey between Leeds and London, like if you really pushed it, and you wouldn't feel bad about that. Like you'd feel like I felt whole at the end of it. Like I didn't feel like I'd like been cheated out of a lot of game. It's just a surprising feeling to kind of go, oh, I've completed a game in less than 3 hours, but I feel like I completed the game. Like, you know, there didn't need to be any more to it. But yeah, I think the thing that sells it the most is probably the tone and how it feels, and the fun side of things. And it does keep it fresh. Every character you meet has got a weird sort of kooky sort of vibe to them. You know, it's probably like a light-hearted South Park in a way, sort of. Okay. So, but yeah, that was Turnip Boy commits tax evasion, the bastard. So yeah, I don't know how you feel about my review on that. I mean,
am I scoring it now or scoring it after you've done your other one as well? Score this now, because then I'd like you to review your game, and then I'll go back and review my other little game. Mine come together, sort of.
Okay, well mine doesn't, so that's fine. So let's do that.
All right. So this is feeling a bit 8 out of 10ish to me.
Okay.
Like it seems like if the story is good enough to carry it and doesn't outstay its welcome, maybe 7, depending on the actual gameplay. But yeah, it feels pretty positive.
Yeah, I'm pleased with that. I'd be there or thereabouts, I think, with that. Yeah. So yeah, cool. Nice. Well done. Good reading of the tea leaves there.
Thank you.
The turnip leaves.
I try.
Yeah. So I don't know much what to use because talking is difficult, and who knew that would be the case on a podcast?
Cool. Okay, so I will wade in on mine. I'm going to stick my notes up here because it doesn't matter if you see anymore. So I've done a pair of shmups, obviously, on the Game Boy.
Wow. Okay. Yay.
So what I've got here, I've got Solar Striker from 1990, which I think is the first Game Boy shmup. If it isn't the first, it's certainly close. And then I've also got Dangan GB from 2019, and it was a homebrew made for the Game Boy's 30th anniversary. Wow. So I'm going to try and encapsulate like 30 years of Game Boy shmup development here in very, very short amount of time.
That's great. That's so cool.
It might or might not go well. So Solar Striker was made by Nintendo and Minakuchi Engineering, and turns out the Minakuchi lot did quite a few Game Boy games in the end, and did a couple of other notable ones like the Mega Drive version of Mega Man and stuff like that. So they know their onions, to steal a character from Turnip Boy.
They know those turnips, yeah.
What's notable about the Nintendo side of things is that the director and the producer are Satoru Okada and Gunpei Yokoi, and they were both heavily involved in the development of the Game Boy itself. As a game, this is kind of in there as one of the early ones to try and showcase what the system can do. I've got to give a quick shout out to a YouTube video from Game Boy on Solar Striker. It was really, really useful for this because it kind of highlighted the fact that at least one of these people were kind of seeing the Game Boy more as the development or the evolution of like the Game & Watch, rather than trying to do something like the NES or the Famicom or something like that. Whereas the other person was seeing it the other way around.
Yeah.
And so you end up with this kind of clash of ideas. And when you start looking at early Game Boy games, this one included, with that Game & Watch kind of thing in mind, and the whole very sort of scaled back, sort of 2-frame animation deal, it makes a lot more sense why some of the Game Boy games look and feel the way they do. So this is a very simple shooting game.
Okay.
Right? Now, cards on the table, I have not finished it. I can maybe get towards the tail end of stage 2. I think there are 6. I am not very good at it. So it is a vertically scrolling game. You can go left and right slightly, like beyond the sort of confines of the screen. There's no real clear reason why. Like it doesn't really feel like you need to use that space. It's almost more like it's just there to sort of show off.
Yeah.
The other thing that I should mention, thinking about it before I get too far into the mechanics, is I played this on my Game Boy Advance, which has been modded with a snazzy screen, so it's like quite bright and vibrant. So graphically, it looks great on the screen. It is not a fair representation of what it looked like on the original console. So I can imagine that when you looked at it originally, it might have been a little bit tricky to pass what was going on sometimes. But on this Game Boy Advance, on more modern takes on the hardware, it looks great still. The biggest sort of, not even gripes, the things that I noted with it are the fact that when you've got your power-ups, rather than like giving you any different weapons or sort of putting any kind of radical spin on things, it's a very linear system. So you get one power-up, you speed up slightly, and your shot gets a little bit more powerful. Then you get another power-up, and your shot changes ever so slightly. Yeah. To, like, say where you were firing 1 bullet before, you might fire 2. and then you get another one, and it gets a bit more powerful, and you move a bit quicker.
Yeah.
Then it changes again, and there's maybe
that basic progression.
Yeah. There's not much meat on the bone, right? The other thing is that you can only have 3 of your bullets on screen at a time. However, this is going to take some explaining. However, your bullets move so fast, most of the time that doesn't matter. And the reason I say most of the time is that I tried it, I tested it, I haven't been able to test it accurately. I am convinced, and I wish I had the numbers to back this up, I'm convinced that when you move higher up the screen, your rate of fire increases because your bullets are leaving the screen quicker. So your 3 bullets cycle faster than when you're at the bottom of the screen and they have that longer travel time. Yeah. So I don't think that's deliberate.
But as a concept, if you're battling something coming down the screen at you quite quickly,
it's kind of
it really does increase the
I think
the risk reward situation.
Yeah, and the problem is that the scoring doesn't go with it.
Right.
That's the thing. If I thought for a second it was deliberate, and you had a kind of a Ketsui kind of a situation where like the mechanics are geared towards ultra aggressive play, you're onto something there. Yeah. But they're not. And it's.
I'm confident in saying that they're not.
I'm pretty confident. It's not a huge difference, right, in the fire rate. However, I am sitting here thinking, shit, like, what's to say that I can't nick that idea and then go and try and whip up something on the Pico 8 or something like that that, riffs on it? Because I think you have the bones there of a really cool, really aggressive system. And there's a lot to like about it. You can pick up and play. It doesn't muck about. You fire it up, you press start, you're in, and you're shooting stuff. For a quick pick up and play or going on the bus or whatever, absolutely would have scratched an itch back in the day. I just wish there was a little bit more to it. Yeah. And I think there's a compliment in there. Like I want there to be more to it. Yeah. And I could see why. Like I fully intend to go back and properly like try and learn it. Because like there is something about it. There is something hypnotic about it being so simple. But at the same time, I know that I'm going to be sitting there going like, I wish I could, like, if I'm going to be this high up the screen to manipulate the fire rate, I want to be rewarded for it, and I'm not. There is that. But it is a fun game, and especially for something so early in the system's life, it is impressive what they managed to pack into it. Arguably not as impressive as some of the things that came out even a couple of months later, but nonetheless. Which brings me to the other one. Okay. And I will get you to score these together.
Oh, really?
Which is why I'm rattling through.
Can we not score them separately?
No, like you'll score them separately, but at the same time.
Okay, fair enough. That's fine. Yeah, cool.
So, like with this,
my brain maybe can't take that though. I'm like fixated on like a number in my head now. Like, oh.
So with this one, like it's kind of at the other end of the scale. So it's a boss rush. Again, I think it's maybe 6 stages. Again, I couldn't get much further than the second one reliably, but it is an honest to goodness bullet hell. Like on a Game Boy.
Can't even imagine that. Like,
it's fucking nuts, right? So you just have this massive, like, it takes up maybe like a third of the screen kind of boss. No. You're this little ship. Your hitbox is maybe like 1 pixel from it. It's firing all these pixel-sized bullets at you in these waves and these sweeping patterns that are just like hypnotic to look at. You have like a rapid shot, and you have bombs that can screen clear and give you a bit of space. You've got options for picking your speed before you start. You've got difficulty options. When you get in, like unlike Solar Striker, when you do pass a stage, you do actually get a bonus for like accuracy, time, things like that. So you can try and manipulate the scoring system a little bit, and you can approach it in different ways to see if that impacts your scoring, and so there's a bit more replay value there for you. I think the only thing I would want from it that it doesn't have, despite being like technically like really impressive that it can throw these things around the way they do, is that I would really, really like there to be like a shot selection. You know, if I could choose a spread shot or something like that. But kind of like with Solar Striker, it's the sort of thing that there's so much stuff there that I quite like. I just wish that there was like a sequel or, you know, something to just grow the idea and develop it a little bit more. However, it does feel like of the two, Dangan is a bit more of a kind of complete package, or at least as far as my sensibilities are confirmed, as far as my sensibilities go. But like it at the same time, it is the sort of thing that is difficult. Like you have to spend time with it, you have to sit with it, you have to learn it, and you will fail. And it can get frustrating, but for what it does and what it's set out to do, considering that it was made by a couple of people as a homebrew, as a labour of love to the system, and again as a technical showpiece like Solar Striker, to see what they managed to wring out of the system is massively impressive. Would absolutely recommend if you want to like try and do some micro dodging when you're on the go on your 89/90 Game Boy system.
How did you get hold of the home brew? Or did you Game Boy Advance? Did you say you play that on there as well?
Yeah, I did. So it can be downloaded and played on an emulator. However, once upon a time, I think it was Cat Skull Games did a physical release of it.
Oh, right, okay.
And so hopefully the people that made it managed to get a little bit of money from me for it, because they thoroughly deserve it. Well done, guys.
I mean, at the same time, though, I guess I'm probably supporting a little bit of Solar Striker here, is that Dangan feels a bit like it can enjoy that experience of the development of shmups over the last 30 years. So therefore, it should be a better game, surely.
It is standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? I don't know, it's distilling them from, you know, any other area, arcade, whatever it may be, and then distilling them back into the Game Boy. So that is obviously a difficult thing to do, and that's impressive about it. So I get that that's the difference, if you will. Yeah,
that's the tricky bit. Because the genre that Dangan didn't emerge until after the Game Boy had been surpassed by, you know, whatever else. Or at least didn't emerge fully.
The equivalent of somebody just stood there, like, throwing an actual Game Boy at a tank or something. It's a real-life shmup. Like, this is bullet hell.
It is an impressive piece of work to take something that was initially, like born in the arcades on considerably more powerful hardware, and distill it down. And like, not only that, they managed to distill it down to like the kind of barest component parts, yet it still feels complete. And all I would like would be more, and for, you know, it's pure greediness. You know, I would love to see them do like a Game Boy Advance one, say, you know, with a couple of different ship types, a couple of different shot types, things like that. Similarly, like Solar Striker, I would like love to discover that there was some, I don't know, an N64 version or something like, you know, something that's just a little bit more fully fledged, I guess. But again, like for the time and when it was made, like I am impressed by it. Of the two, arguably, I would probably more readily go back to Solar Striker, but I think that's partly because I feel like I stand a better chance of learning it. Like they both have their strong points, both thoroughly enjoyable. Solar Striker occasionally has a couple of bits where, you know, the enemies might come at you from a weird angle that doesn't really feel quite as thought out as the rest of it. But compared to some of the shmups I've played over the years, it's not like anything's coming up like from the bottom of the screen to ambush you with like clouds of bullets that you can't do anything about and stuff like that. Like it's easy to make a bad shmup, and a bad shmup, Solar Striker is not. Like it might be a bit bare bones, but it is not a bad game.
And just think about that then, not to go down the shmup sort of wormhole that I regularly dive down with you, but just like, I guess you can tell there's noticeable differences between these shmups. Now, when I see a shmup, and this isn't to degrade the area of expertise or anything, but they all look a bit samey to me with the untrained eye. Whereas, obviously it sounds like there's a very noticeable difference here, and I guess I would notice that difference. Like, how do you go about noticing the differences in shmups? I mean, I know the artwork's different, but...
Sure. I tell you what, right, like, thinking about it, I think playing these two back to back, because of how they're both taking these big arcade experiences and scaling them right the way down to, like, the barest essentials, to, put these things across. It's almost like a kind of... I don't know, doing a stick figure drawing of a really famous work of art or something like that, yet somehow nailing the positions. It's that kind of thing. Because they both do what they manage to do very, very well, but for different styles of shmups, I think actually playing one than the other will give you the clearest indication of what the difference is between certain parts of the genre. So, I mean, like Dangan, you're not doing the sort of run-up stage to the boss. You're not blowing up popcorn enemies or anything like that. It is purely about dodging these clouds of bullets and things like that. Whereas Solar Striker, you have those longer run-ins and fewer bullets, more enemies to shoot, and you have to be a bit more selective with what you're doing. I think as the purest indication of the differences, you could do a lot worse than play these two.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for conveying that answer really well.
Thanks.
I feel like I understand it a lot more now.
More luck than judgment. But
as it is with most things on this podcast. So, scores then. That's difficult because I feel like you always skew a little bit more positive than maybe you come across sometimes. I feel like I want to say 7 and 8 respectively for those, I think. So 7 being for Solar Striker, 8 for Dangan. Would that be in the ballpark of what you felt, or would you...
That would be in the ballpark. That's very, very close. I would have probably said 7 for Solar Striker and maybe 9 for Dangan.
Oh, right, okay.
Maybe.
So even more positive than I thought that you were being about it.
I think...
I was going to go 6 and 7, but then I'm glad that I didn't, because I would have really shorted Dangan for you there.
To be honest with you, 6 and 7 wouldn't be entirely, like, you can make an argument for it, especially with Solar Striker. But I think for me, it is the technical achievement of Dangan that does it. And yeah, like you say, it's kind of cheating because it is, created with the benefit of a shit ton of hindsight. But nonetheless.
But aren't all video games nowadays in a way? Do you know what I mean? And you still get shit video games. You still get some bad ones. So, it's cheating but doing it well. So I guess speaking of arcade games or arcade style games that are being run better almost or by better counterparts. I don't know where I'm going. This is a terrible segue. Where am I going with this? Speaking of Outrun.
Hey!
So I have played Outrun on the Nintendo Switch.
Oh, nice.
And it is a Sega Ages game released in 2019. The original game was released in 1986. And it was reading Retro Gamer talking about Outrun Coast to Coast that made me feel like I have never played Outrun really properly. I've had a dabble in the arcade club, but in that lovely cabinet that you can see. That's so good, and you can move around in it. But, I mean, with my semi-disability, the chair digs into my back and hurts too much. No. So sitting at home with a Nintendo Switch in your hand is quite lovely. So I also played this in a handheld vibe more so than I did actually on the screen. I played it on big screen and, also on the Switch. It's handheld mode, and they both look absolutely stunning. As in, this port is incredible. You talked about in the last podcast about Sega, they should monetize more things. They probably should have monetized this a little bit better. It cost me £1.50, I think it was. Really?
Wow.
I've never seen better value out of a game that wasn't free. I knew the lore of Outrun and how well regarded it is as possibly, and we've spoken about arcade races previously, of it almost being...
It's the granddaddy,
the one, had been, the original best arcade racer. And I've seen it, like I say, firsthand as well in the arcade club, and enjoyed it, but to see it polished and to have it in your home and to see the features they've added to it in terms of, simple things as most things are nowadays, save states added to it. I need them. I need save states for Outrun. I still haven't beat it with save states, so I'm very close to beating it, but I've got this specific save state that is like, if I take every single corner perfectly, I will beat it. But I'm still working on that at the moment. But again, I was talking about the length of this game and things. The actual length of Outrun, so for those that don't know the concept of Outrun, never played it, you have 5 different outcomes that you can get to. So basically, you have a racing stage. You and your female counterpart are racing in your red Ferrari for undetermined reasons. And you are racing down the road. The basic concept is that you need to dodge the cars that are in the road, but also the corners whip at you very quickly. There are usually things on the outskirts of the road, sort of like, Inca temples and don't know.
Isn't one of them like a fish bait shop or something like that?
That fucking fish bait shop every time. Like, you're there in your Ferrari having a good time, and all of a sudden you smell like sardines. It's just like, and yeah, so there's always obstacles around the edge of the course that keep you in line. And it is very much one of these arcade games that you need to fail 100 times to become good at it.
Yep.
And to know the corners and know what's coming up. And, it's a great concept. Racing against the clock to beat a stage. But to include the choice to go left or right towards the end of the stage, and it takes you to a completely different part of the game, it's brilliant. It's so clever to have done that and think actually there are however many computations, like 25 I guess it would be, or whatever it would be, like different levels that you can possibly go to complete the game. And not only that, you can go an easier route or a harder route, but actually sometimes the harder routes aren't that much harder than the easier route. So I mean, and I've talked about not being able to beat the game yet so far. I've taken the alleged easy route so far, and I'm still kind of like, oh no. So there is so much replayability in this game as the original concept was, and to be able to have those save states really makes a massive difference. You can choose the music. The music's ported really well. Again, that's quite a famous thing, that the music is thought of as some of the best arcade music that you can have going, and it really is. That it's just a wonderful experience, this game, in its original iteration, but also the way that they've ported it across for such good value it's outstanding, really. I was just so chuffed when I started playing it, and I didn't realise, I thought it was going to be really good as a game, but I'm sometimes, for being quote unquote retro gamer, sometimes go, this is too old for me, and I'm like, this isn't like, this is too Solar Striker, this is too like, out there, and I'm like, I feel like I can't relate to the material. This and what they've done to it in terms of how it looks, it feels like the perfect iteration of this game. It really does, that, isn't it? I can't say enough about it, really. I would have had no money left whatsoever if this had been a coin operated game for me. Do you know what I mean? I think I am an arcade racer. I've decided,
Is that
how much
your sweet spot?
It just seems to be, I guess I didn't realise that about myself until
this voyage of discovery.
Yeah, exactly. But isn't that nice to kind of have these feelings about yourself?
Yeah, like it's half the fun of it, isn't it?
And you spoke about, even small little things that last podcast you talked about the PlayStation TV and how you can change the screen size. You can do that here as well, and it even has the option. I don't know why, it's a bit of a weird one, but also, like, I guess it's gimmicky but also fun, where you can sort of size it down so that it's in an arcade booth on your television.
Nice.
And it's just like, it's like, all right, fair enough, why not? Do you know what I mean? You can just get it whatever size TV you need. And like I said, whilst it's almost, I've said, it's hard to beat because, it has the arcade replayability over and over. That's how you get the longevity out of the game.
Yeah.
I don't genuinely think it's a difficult game. Like, as in, so if I was a better gamer, like, I would beat this game easier than I am. And if I give it another 10 goes, I will beat the first level. And I know I'm going to come back and play Outrun again on my Switch. Do you know what I mean? I just know it's going to happen.
It feels like someone's not only just discovered they're an arcade racer, but someone's had their arcade epiphany. It's like, I need to learn it. I'll get in. Yeah. Turn that difficulty down, learn the ropes, crank it up.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah. And I've already admitted, I think, openly that I was wrong about the ease of things. But yeah, this, I guess you have to find the game that proves that. So you have to find the one, don't you? Do you know what I mean? Isn't like, the one that you lose your arcade virginity to. Feel very vulnerable right now and weird. But yeah, if you've got a Switch and you've never played Outrun, you have played Outrun, and pick this game up for less than £2, like, Sega, charge more for your games, guys. Come on, do you know what I mean? Because it's worth it. If I'd have paid £5 for this game, I'd have been happy. If I'd have paid £10, I probably would have been happy. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, like, that value, it definitely increases how much I've enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, but I can't say enough about it really. If I'm gonna, we talked about sort of, I guess, our favourite arcade races, so I'm gonna let you score it, and then I just want to kind of round off. We won't never not talk about arcade races again, but a little thought process around. We've talked about Ridge Racer. I've talked about Outrun. Mm-hmm. I assume you've played Outrun in an amount or anything like that?
I've got the Mega Drive version sat in a box over there.
Yeah, exactly. So that is, preaching to the choir. And then also, we've talked about Wipeout as well. I'm thinking out of those three that we've kind of talked about previously in the past 21 episodes, which one of those is most your bag? So score this, and then have a think about, because I think they're all a little bit different. I just thought that little 5-minute conversation at the end talking about those, and sort of maybe get a bit of a, doesn't have to be, this is the best or anything, but what's kind of your vibe most out of those?
Okay, cool. So before I score this, one quick question: is it just the arcade version that they've got on there, or is it like the Mega Drive one as well, or?
It just seems to be the arcade version, yes. That's, and it's not like Outrun 2 or anything on that. It is just the original.
Okay. I am still going to give it a 9.
Okay.
That feels like a 9 to me, especially for the price you paid and it is a classic for a reason. And the only reason I asked about the Mega Drive version is that I know the Mega Drive version is good, but I also happen to know that the arcade version is better.
Okay.
Or at least I think it is.
Yeah.
So
why is that?
Just more oomph in the hardware.
Okay.
And so it could kind of do what it was trying to do a little bit smoother, sharper, etc., etc. But yeah, you can't really go far wrong with Outrun. I don't think.
I'm pretty happy with that score. Thank you for being in the ballpark. I mean, I felt like I was effusive enough to get that score. If you'd gone 3 out of 10 out of that, I'd have been
I got a feeling that you were leaning a certain way with it.
Kicked off.
So for the ones that we've covered,
let me reframe this. Just because I've thought of it now. So Outrun's like sort of 80s cars.
Yep.
Ridge Racer, you're talking sort of like late 2000s, sort of 2010 cars.
Yeah,
Wipeout, we're talking 2049.
Future.
Do you know what I mean? So, what is your favourite era, almost, guided by those games of arcade racing?
So, it was something of a revelation, actually, because I'd never really played any of them before we started doing this. And I kind of discovered them through doing this podcast. I'm going to go Ridge Racer. I am...
Even with your poor PS Vita version of Ridge Racer.
Which I have since got rid of, yes. And I'll tell you why, because through that and through the PS TV that I've mentioned previously, I picked up the PSP version of it, which, you were right, is way better. Also, I've picked up Ridge Racer 5 on the PS2.
Yeah.
And that is also really, really good.
Yes.
And I'm slightly kicking myself. In fact, I've got Ridge Racer Type 4 knocking around somewhere on the PSCV as well. God. I've just, had this revelation. I've discovered the series. Wipeout, I really enjoy, right? I do. But there is just something about the style of Ridge Racer, and especially that kind of sort of 5 and PSP era where they just started to bring the boosting in, but it wasn't so obnoxious like the later ones where it's just like on autopilot almost. Like there's still some skill to it, but like kind of like you were touching on with Outrun, you feel like you can get in and learn it rather than Wipeout. It feels like I'm going to get in and it's going to slap me around a bit.
Yeah.
Which, if I'm in the mood for it, is great. And like on the Omega collection, it looks incredible. Yeah. But there is just something about Ridge Racer that just scratches many an itch.
There's an addictive feel to all this genre. That it just, I don't know
when
what
it gets it right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there just is like there's something about this type of game for me that, like I said, I didn't even realise it was in me until I was like, I will just sit and go round a track, but it just has to be good. You know, there's got to be something that draws me to that. Like the game has got to be, you know, it can't just be a shit racer. But when it's good, it's amazing.
It's something almost zen-like.
Yeah.
About getting into it and just getting into that kind of zone with it. Mm-hmm. And it's I tell you what, like, it's a similar feeling I get from shooters. Like, certain ones where you're dodging in and out of stuff and you kind of know where you're going. Mm-hmm. Like, it is, like, there are similarities. I'm doing hand movements like I'm on a track. Like, it's good for Fazz, but it's lousy for everybody else.
I'm having a great time.
But yeah, it's a similar sort of vibe. Yeah. So I can absolutely see where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that, so to answer my own question, after playing all three kind of types and stuff recently, I think I'm going to go for the Outrun style of the repetitive stage against the clock.
Almost like a rally kind of style.
Yeah, I think that, almost, probably like a rally arcade sort of style. I mean, don't get me wrong. Both the other types of Ridge Racer and Wipeout. Like it put me in the room with all three of them. You know, I'd be in there all day, very, very, very happy. But it's just something. It's not necessarily that it's retro per se, but that challenge is there. That against the clock situation and knowing every corner of the course, and it feels like there's some real skill to the handling of getting down the middle of the track and getting that time, and when you get there, you're like, oh, I've got there in 15 seconds this time. I know that I'm going to have enough for the next stage and things like that. That is, it's a great feeling. And then, you'll do it and you go, oh, I got there with only 11 seconds spare this time. You just literally immediately just go, right, restart, because there's no point. Like, you're not going to have enough time for the next stage. That's great, and that Daytona sort of thing, and
Sega Rally.
Sega Rally. You just know you're not going to have enough for the next bit, and it's almost like the perfection of it. And I don't normally like to be perfect at games, but that type of game really drives you, no pun intended, to be that way. And and that's great that makes me someone that's not a game perfectionist into being like, in that specific type of game, I am being one.
I think, especially with Outrun as well, like it probably helps that it's quite compact. So it's not like you're investing, 20, 30 minutes and then fucking up at the 11th hour. 11th hour, that's a really mixed metaphor. But like right at the end, and, having to restart from that. You're talking about like, a couple of minutes tops. Mm-hmm. I think you're probably onto something when you say it's horses for courses and it's just finding what fits.
That was cool. I really enjoyed kind of just going back over that a little bit.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Cool. Are we done?
I think we're done.
Awesome. Right. Well, that's great then.
Get in the books.
Yeah, I think we're going to get into a little bit of a summer of sport series coming up in the next few podcasts, haven't we?
Oh, yeah, August.
Yeah, we've got a couple of guests coming on, which will be nice. So, if you like your sports games, then keep on listening.
Yeah, and if you don't, I don't know, apologies.
Yeah, no, again, you just keep on listening either way.
Stay.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.